This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. Letters for the rich, letters for the poor. The shop at the corner of the girl next door. Pulling up beat took a steady climb. The gradient's against her, but she's on time.
Hello and welcome to Platform 4 of Walton on Trent Station and episode 4 of Flange Squeal. Most of this episode is an extended special feature on mail trains, including all my postal rolling stock and Crewe RES loco fleet, plus there's some coach customisation and lighting projects too. Stay tuned to the very end for something I've really enjoyed putting together for you. Hopefully you'll enjoy watching it. But first, here's a quick rattle through what I've been up to this past month. Yeah, 54 of them I've done just this month. There are now about 70 all around the layout on both levels, but mainly down in the yards. They work well, these, but I found them temperamental to address on my Ecos. I start off by production lining them to fit wires and rods. They're dead easy to set up and there's space there for a frog wire if you need it. All but one of these today offer insel frogs on a lower level. This one is the last electro frog I need on the scenic level. We're here behind the tunnel portal at Scenic North, and I need a motor to access yard 5 off the up fast. I'm tooled up, ready to dive under the layout. I'd already fitted the frog dropper and drilled a hole for the rod when I laid the track a few months ago, so it's quick work to position the motor, poke the rod through the sleeper and secure it temporarily on the adhesive pad. The pads are not a permanent solution and they will eventually give way, so you will always need to screw them properly to the boards when you're happy everything works properly. You'll also need to remove whatever spring fixture is inside your points so that the point motor will move them freely. or my track here is Pico. Once I've connected them to my bus wire, it's over to the ECOS. I open up the accessories screen and create the turnout. Most of the time the motors will immediately register and you'll be able to fire them on the default settings. On Electro Frogs, the first thing I do is test I've wired them the right way around, which invariably I haven't. I swear they're all random. You can see here the power is going to the wrong track when I throw the point. A simple wire swap around from red to black in the back of the point motor will solve this one. Next comes the fun part. Blimey, the hours I've spent doing this. Flicking this switch to set allows you to assign an accessory address of your choice. The ECOS is really intuitive to use and the big coloured touchscreen really comes into its own for this stuff. Here I've got 3 fields for various names and references I may want to use. I can change the throw duration and most importantly I can assign a unique address. I can only use 4 numbers, so I use a convention for all my point motor addresses. In this case 1501 is level 1, yard 5, point motor 01. Getting the motor to accept the new address is where I've had trouble. Sometimes they'll take it straight away, sometimes I'm back and forwards, up and down, underneath the layout, flicking that switch from set to run, getting more and more irate, until it suddenly just decides to take it. The last box I've just fitted, I had to flick the set switch, throw the points a few times, then set it back to run mode before the ECOS would even find them. It took me a whole evening to stumble on that little trick. If you use these, especially with an ECOS, how have you found them? And if you're having trouble, let me know below and it might be something I've come across. I've had particular difficulties where I've had to reverse the direction of throw. Anyway, once that's done, I'm on to another bit I really like about the ECOS, and that's the track diagram facility. I've got my layout mapped out on over a dozen sections. It's dead easy to do and quite entertaining in itself, or maybe I'm just wired that way. I haven't added yard 5 here yet, so I'm going to start with a screen connector for each of the 2 tracks. Clicking on that will take me to whichever section I assign to it, like a hyperlink. Then with the pop-up toolbox I can select a range of track pieces and build out my yard, adding placeholders to tell me where my points will go. Yard 5 comes off the platform 1 loop line at the scenic south of the layout. Onto the station screen and I can just blast across the top with straight pieces, across Walton North Junction and onto Shannon Upper, which is the board underneath my Intercity Routes of Britain poster. You can see the incline access shooting off the top there. Shannon and Hopgood are the street names to the front and back of the house, named after Dambusters pilots. There you go. Here I've built out the mouth of yard 5 at the north end, and I can add in a turnout, assign the address I've just created, and Bob's your uncle, there's my live turnout. I've spent ages building all these screens and adding the turnouts. Here's yard 3 west and east, but this will allow me to get onto another ECOS feature, which is route setting. I haven't tried this yet, but I might have a play around with that over the Christmas break. I've still got more motors to add though. Despite my best efforts, there are still 15 places on the layout where I can only fit surface mounted motors. They're on the way to me as I speak. Another project for Christmas. Really pleased to get all that done though. It's transformed the operating experience and it was my big objective for this year end. Right, have you sent your Christmas cards yet?
8:30 p.m. Weekdays and Sundays. The Down Coastal Special leaves Euston for Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen.
Walton-on-Trent has always been planned as a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. If you saw episode 3 last month, you'll have seen my pretty ambitious plans for the station and shopping centre, and they've been designed with their night appearance very much in my mind's eye. Being able to run a steady flow of Freightliners, Scottish sleepers and mail trains past the backdrop of a sleeping city is a big part of the Walton vision. I like to run authentic trains and I enjoy researching what ran, when, where and how it looked. Using a combination of working timetables, YouTube and Flickr, I can usually find what I want. However, when it comes to night trains, and particularly mail trains, things get a bit tricky. There are far fewer images and videos of real trains at night from 30 years ago. Stations were most likely closed, rural locations like Norton Bridge or Heamy's Farm would be impractical, and it just wasn't as popular as capturing trains in the daylight. Even looking at Crewe, which has been a major postal hub for decades, you're lucky to catch anything other than shunting activity or a glimpse of a train in the background. These videos you're seeing now are the best I could readily find. They're a few years later than my era, most are in EWS times I think, but the vehicles used are very similar and it gives a good impression of how TPOs in particular looked. Flickr has proved more useful and I've been able to find shots of specific trains that ran mail up or down the west coast through Stafford in the early 90s. Just at random I picked up my summer 94 working timetable and made a note of both the up and down operations in a 24-hour period. I was a bit surprised to learn that there are twice as many downs, i.e. northbounds, as ups, southbounds. That probably explains the need for another type of mail-ish train, the NPCCS, or non-passenger carrying coaching stock. Mail trains ran live overnight and the empty coaching stock, or NPCCS, was repositioned during the following day, ready for that night's service. If you're watching a long train of postal vehicles racing past in daylight, it's almost certainly stop positioning. Mail trains were given the same priorities as express passenger trains, head codes for both starting with a 1. NPCCS head codes began with a 5. As an example, 5S09 ran as NPCCS from Euston to Coventry, where it changed to 1S09 and became a fully staffed TPO to Glasgow. The timing code of E315 tells us that it was hauled by an electric loco, diesel would be D, and consisted of 9 coaches. How do I know that? Well, the number is always a multiple of 35, which I assume is the weight assigned to each coach. So 35 times 10 would be 350, knock one off would be 315. You'll also see in the working timetable 105, which is a 3-van parcel train, or 245, which is a 7-van. Another distinction in the working timetable is between trains marked mail and trains marked postal. Trains labelled as mail consisted of unstaffed vans of mail sacks simply being moved from one location to another. Trains labelled as postal included dedicated sorting vehicles in their formations and carried Royal Mail staff who sorted mail en route. I also read the official report into the Rickerscote train crash which occurred just south of Stafford Station in March 1996 and involved a southbound freight train which derailed into the path of 1S09, the Coventry-Glasgow postal we just looked at. That report gave me the formation of that train. With all these clues in our back pocket, we can launch into Flickr and start doing some detective work on how we want our formations to look. So now I can search on any combinations of head code, years, locations, origins and destinations, maybe with mail and postal in there too. Through summer 1994, this is what ran. The first northbound of the evening was 1S81, departing Tunbridge in Kent at 13:24, passing through Stafford at 18:59, en route to Glasgow Central, arriving there at 23:40. The timing load is D210, which tells us it's a diesel loco, hauling up to 6 coaches. It's indicated as mail, so we know they're just loaded vans rather than sorting vehicles. Being a daytime departure and running from Kent to Glasgow, this train was an easy catch for photographers, and we have plenty of images here to put our clues and theories to the test. This train switched to electric haulage at Crewe, which is why we're seeing a Class 86 here and there. 86239 LS Lowry is on the front in this picture, the same loco we saw on its side at Rickerscote a few moments ago. Three and a half hours later, 1S06 ran through. This was the 2035 ex-Euston, the same departure time, give or take 5 minutes, as the famous night mail of the 1930s film. However, by 1994 it conveyed vans only, a maximum of 11, behind an electric loco all the way to Glasgow Central, arriving there at 2:58. A TPO would follow later. I've only found one picture of this train, but we can see an 86 heading a rake of vans, so our theories from the working timetable are still holding up. No pictures of this one, but at 22:48, 3 diesel-hauled vans passed through. Followed at 23:04 by 1S09, the Coventry-Glasgow Postal. No pictures of this either, but this used to be the 2035 TPO departure from Euston until the very start of the 90s. This is it with 87020 North Britain on the front. We know its typical formation from the Rickerscote report. At 1 a.m, the only stopping mail arrived at Stafford. No pics of this one either, I'm afraid. This was 1H02, London Euston to Manchester Piccadilly, electric hauled with up to 9 vans on the back. It made a 6-minute stop at Stafford, enough to sling a few sacks around. And if we go back to the top, we can see here that it dropped 3 vans at Crewe. Just as the Manchester vans were departing Stafford, they'd be overtaken on the down fast by 1994's equivalent of the night mail, 1S27 Euston to Glasgow Central TPO. No pictures again, I'm afraid, but the formation would almost certainly be the same or similar as the one we're watching leave Glasgow Central right now in 1998. After stopping at Crewe, Preston and Carlisle, it would arrive at Central at 5:35 in the morning. This was probably the primary West Coast mainline mail of the night, the Royal Scot of the post office, you might say. "1 a.m. was rush hour for mail through Stafford, and after 3 diesel-hauled vans trundled off from Stafford to Stoke, we had 2 more TPOs in quick succession. Diesel-hauled 1M45 was a 22:30 departure from Peterborough to Carlisle. Here's a sorting vehicle being loaded at Peterborough. And then to wrap up the night's fun, electric-hauled 1M43 ran through at 01:39 en route from Dover Priory to Manchester Piccadilly. This ran via West London and the Thames Valley, and departing Dover at 19:20 was early enough to be captured frequently at its stop in Reading. This train was diesel-hauled between Dover and Coventry. At Coventry it switched to electric, and then it switched to a diesel again at Crewe. This was one of only 2 trains to have a return equivalent, departing Piccadilly at 2100 with up to 11 coaches behind it, passing Stafford at 22:19 under AC power. The other was the return Glasgow to Coventry Postal, 1M44, potentially loaded to the max with 17 coaches. are running through a tick after midnight. As the Glasgow sorter took the Birmingham loop, 9 vans from Lime Street took the up fast 3 minutes later to Euston, under wires all the way. The last TPO of the night was the 2358 Crewe to Euston. All southbounds were electric and its 9 vans appeared around 20 past midnight. At the first sign of light in the sky, the 2245 from Glasgow, made up of 9 vans for Birmingham, concluded the night's activity at 3:52 a.m. This was the night's only southbound stop. If you can add any more information, or if I've got something wrong, please comment below. I'd be glad to hear from you. So now we've got our prototypes, let's see what's available to the modeller.
The Postal Special is a fast express, but it carries no passengers. 500,000 letters are sorted, picked up or dropped during the night.
Essential to any mail or postal train is the Mark 1 BG. These need no introduction other than to say minor or Bachmann. The blue-grey is factory weathered. I'm sure I read that the Royal Mail contract stipulated that all stock and locos on postal duty should be clean and smart at all times, so I won't be going overboard on any of these with the airbrush, although the Intercity legend will be coming off the third one down, as if they ever had it in real life, they certainly didn't by the 1990s, after being cascaded from frontline passenger duties. Remember, the Mark III DVT made a lot of these vans redundant. Note these all have end steps, which I think were all removed in the real world around the time of electrification. A moment's thought will tell you why, but Bachmann insist on fitting them on most of their Mark 1 models. I could remove them, but I think the chance of damage to either the coach or my fingers is high, and they're not really noticeable from 2 feet away when running. Bit annoying once you know though. I fitted Hunt's magnetic couplers to all of them, and as usual, I've completely removed the coupling mechanism from one end of one van, which will always be at the rear of any train and will have a tail lamp fitted. Just as important is the Mark 1 GUV. I have quite a few of these for either my mail trains or my motor rails. Again, these are Bachmann and have magnetic couplers fitted. I'm not sure if B1 bogies were still running on stock like this in the 90s. Some more research needed there, I think, and potentially a bogie swap for that Royal Mail version. There were still plenty of all blue GUVs kicking around until even after my era. I don't have any of those yet. They tend to get snapped up at strong prices on eBay when they do appear. I might try a repaint of a cheaper model, should be pretty easy I'd have thought. Not being gangwayed, these weren't used on TPOs as the staff would not be able to access them during the journey. It's Bachmann again for the TPO stock. This is a stowage vehicle, one of 40 in the 80400 series of coaches, and I reckon 80420 makes it a 1968 build from York. The tops code NTX indicates it was dual braked, and they were also dual heated, so steam and electric. The tiny windows were specified on vehicles built after the 1963 Great Train Robbery. I've got 2 of these at the moment. They're not that easy to find at a reasonable price, and they're good stable runners. I do take issue with the livery application. Those stripes and numbers and the Royal Mail insignia should be yellow, not orange. There's always something, isn't there? Nicely detailed ends though, and as a late 60s build, no steps. Yay! The sorting vehicle is far more striking, with prominent and correctly coloured branding. BR built 96 of these to various similar designs between 1959 and 1977. Tops code NSV means this is vacuum braked. No idea what the T in brackets means. Anybody know? And could this have run behind a Class 90 with vacuum brakes? Again, tell me below if you know, please. 80301 was the second of these ever built, rolling out of Wolverton Works in 1959. As a pre-train robbery coach, it's got the larger windows, and you can see the blanked off area where the catching net used to be. That practice ended in 1971. This exact vehicle soldiered on until 1998 and now lives a preserved life at the Great Central Railway. I've got 4 of these, 2 versions of 301 and 2 of 303. I'm not sure how accurate it is to have 4 of these older vehicles in my TPO. The usual formation seemed to be 4 sorters, 2 stowage and 3 vans, although in the 90s both the sorters and stowage all looked like this, with either 2 or 3 access doors. These older NSVs seem to be few and far between. I'll stick with them for now in the absence of anything else, especially as these are the only Bachmann TPO vehicles with the full travelling post office branding. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, isn't it? The ends are well detailed, although the 4 steps to heaven are back. They're eye-catching on a layout for sure, and if I have quibbles over my era fit, well, that's hardly Bachmann's fault. However, what is their fault is that these are a wee bit wobbly. Compared to the stowage vehicle. Somewhere along the line, Bachmann have recognised this problem, I think, as removing the bogies on the stowage vehicle reveals 2 little stabilising pegs to stop the bodies wobbling on the bogie shaft. The stowage vehicles are also much heavier. And this is why. I've just dipped my toe into the world of Lima 47s for the sole reason of modelling this formation, which was very common south of Crewe Depot. You'd often see 3 locos strung together with no vans too. I've ripped the guts out of these, which is why they're in this section on rolling stock, and I've been surprised by how good they actually look. I got as far as tarting them up a bit, but then discovered the ride height is way lower than my other locos, so I've temporarily abandoned the idea. But if anyone has any tips to mod these to a correct ride height, please comment below. At 40 quid each, I think it would be a good little project for another bit of realistic running. I can imagine a future layout where I've got a load of these stabled up in a Crewe diesel style backseat.
This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. Letters for the rich, letters for the poor, the shop at the corner of the girl next door.
These are the core TPO vehicles. We've got 4 sorters and 2 stowage there. I've also got 4 BGs, which I think were also acted as extra stowage. Obviously being corridored, and these were occupied. People would be up and down these trains working, sorting for the entirety of the journey. So I don't see why it shouldn't be lit, not brightly lit like a coach, but there would be lighting in there obviously so they could see what they're doing. So these I've recycled from old Mark III coaches, or a former rake I had when this was going to be an 80s layout. I had a couple of blue-grey rakes of Mark IIIAs, and I got around to fitting lighting and passengers and everything in them. They were sold off a while ago, but I did retrieve the lighting rigs from them. They're in various states of repair, I suppose you might say. The original kit is these. I think these, I want to say Train Tech. If I'm wrong, I'll put a comment below so you know where they're from. And I don't know if they're still 650, but you get the complete kit. There's an LED lighting strip, a coin battery, some wiring, a battery holder and a reed switch. So these are magnetically operated, which I prefer. I know it has its drawbacks, but it doesn't flicker and I can decide when the lights are on and off rather than just have everything on as soon as you switch the layout on. I know you can DCC lighting these days and make it more controllable. I'm not going down that route, certainly on this version of the layout. So we're going to get these open. I'm going to certainly light all of these. I've got 6 kits here. I've got enough. I've got 4 of these as well. The other 3 are underneath. So I have just about got enough. I've got 2 here and I've got 2 spare bits here. 3 actually. So I've got more than enough if I wanted to light the whole train. It's not going to be lit up like a Christmas tree or a full passenger rake. And some of the windows, well, all the windows are quite small. It's old Mark 1 stock. I imagine there's probably strip lights or little screw bulb lights in the ceiling. So I don't know how bright it should be, but I'm going to dim it down anyway. I use diffuser strips on my lighting. And I've also, say these are out of a Mark 3, so I actually painted the inside cream just to give an even more diffused and warmer glow. These are warm white lights, but without anything at all. They're still quite bright, so I tone them down as best as I can just to give it a more ambient, warmer, gentler atmosphere. You see some coaches and going past on some layouts or on some, straight out the box DCC lighting. You think, my God, the poor passengers will be blinded and cooked in there. So I dim it right down. You tend not to be able to see that lights are even on in daytime in coaches. If you look at videos, they kind of look like that. It's only when it's dark or through a tunnel or maybe like an underground station like I'm building down there where the lights suddenly come into effect. So that's what I'm going to try to achieve here. So we'll get these open. There'll be a little bit of soldering. These are a pain in the arse to solder. They really are, because everything's so fine. The pads on the LED strips are so small. So yeah, the swearometer will be ticking into red during this, no doubt. But I'm hoping the final effect will be well worth the effort. So now the body's open. You can see the pillars there where the screws hold them onto the chassis. The length of the original pieces that I had, they're too long to fit on the ceiling between those screw holes. So also I think this would probably just be way too bright. So what I might do is certainly take them off the diffuser strips. I'll pull them off. They're held on just for like adhesive gum on the back, and probably try to align it as best I can and maybe blank off several, if not most, of these LEDs altogether, so that the lights are probably only kind of here, maybe 2 there, and maybe 1 here around the door in this end. Make it quite dim. I don't want 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 12 lights there, so that would be way too bright, even with a diffuser strip on, I think. What I'm also thinking, seeing as obviously the entire thing, apart from that detail, is bright red. It's obviously red plastic as well, so I'm thinking maybe, and I'm setting myself up for a massive job here, but if this is lit up, do I do a bit on the inside as well? I don't want to see a bright red interior there. Look like a bloody teenager's bedroom in the 1980s, so I might just kind of brown this down dark. But I think they were kind of wood trim and fittings in there, all the kind of sorting pigeonholes and things like that. So what I'm going to do now is going to go downstairs, get on the internet and do some more research. But I can see what was going to be a quick Saturday morning project of putting lighting in is probably turning into a major project. But if you're going to do this stuff, you might as well do it as best as you can. So yeah, I'm going to have a look now and then report back in a bit. So there you go, the exact moment when a small coach lighting project changed into the first Flange Squeal Christmas special feature, and hours of research and editing has followed ever since. I'm already thinking about next Christmases. One famous old film casts a long shadow over the mail train story, and you'll have noticed it weaving in and out of this little homage I'm doing here. In 1986, the BBC tried to recapture that magic with Night Mail 2, and we're seeing some of that here. It doesn't come close to capturing the magic, of course, but it's useful to see inside a working TPO in the modern era. What struck me is how relatively little has changed.
Coming down from St Pancras, who specialise on Yorkshire, County Durham and Northumberland, And going back up again the other way towards St Pancras, we specialise on counties that's south of Derby. We've then got certain post office services built into our arrival time. I mean, we've got to rely on vans arrival from different places to our route to take the work back again. But the network's built around us. And the other TPOs, of course.
Fathers and grandfathers of these men were crewing TPOs in the year that Grierson's classic documentary Night Mail was made. If they were lucky enough to be in work, that is. If not, they might have been marching from Jarrow. Some things don't change.
I've also got pictures of 80301 sorting carriage in preservation, so now I know exactly how this vehicle looked on the inside. But I'm not totally mad, so all I'll be looking to do is to achieve an impression of an interior. And this is what I've come up with. If you thought you were going to see me build a set of 00 gauge pigeonholes, well, sorry to disappoint. I've painted the ceiling and one wall in cream. I just masked up the coach and blasted it with an aerosol. I then measured out strips of plasticard and blasted those with a kind of mahogany colour. For this kind of simple painting, I quite like these paints. I always get a good finish. They dry quickly and they don't drip or puddle unless you really try to. You can see what they're intended for. I'm probably the only middle-aged accountant on their database, I expect. I've also painted the glazing insert for the two centre doors after using a masking fluid in the actual window area. The stowage vehicle has simply had the ceiling painted cream. The windows are so small that I really don't think anything else is necessary. I do think light radiating off a cream ceiling will look different to and better than off a red ceiling, however. I've also painted the full-length weight, which acts as a floor. Before you start thinking I've gone over to the bad place, this is how it looks unpainted. You can see the flare just coming off the ceiling lights here in the kitchen. I don't want interior coach lights reflecting off that. After equal amounts of swearing and soldering, I got the lighting strips fitted, only to end up with a visit from our old friend Major General Lightbleed. So I took the coaches apart again and coated the insides with black acrylic paint where they weren't double skinned by the brown plasticard inserts. I also masked and painted two thin black strips inside the diffuser strips to take off some of the flare, but also to give a better impression of strip lighting. I've added a crew of postal workers in each sorting vehicle, roughly 10 in each. These are just the cheap, crappy Chinese figures you can get on eBay. They've all had lower leg amputations, so they don't look ridiculously tall, and painted in a uniform of black trousers, white shirt and blue sweater. They're mostly positioned to be working at the pigeonholes, although one or two are tending the sacks under the windows, or maybe moving between coaches. Finally, I added a 10 kilogram weight at each end and a piece of black painted plasticard. The weight is for stability, but also acts to block the openings over the top of the bogies so I don't get light bleed underneath the coach, which I was in testing. The plasticard is stuck on with two blobs of black tack, as the coupling cam needs to move freely underneath it. I couldn't glue it down hard against the floor of the coach. And this is them back on the track. They flare a bit on camera in the dark, but in the room here they look exactly as I wanted them to. Pretty simple internal detailing, but the impression it gives, I think, is very convincing. You can't see exactly what is going on in there, but it's obvious something is. As I said earlier, it's all about the impression. I also weathered the chassis, sole bar, bogies and wheels and gave the roofs a dust of roof dirt. That speckled effect on this coach was accidental when my airbrush coughed, although it actually looks quite authentic. I couldn't recreate that if I tried. The interior of a real BG van is pretty simple, unlike the convoluted way Bachmann built their model of it. They're a real faff to dismantle and reassemble, but the separate pieces do make repainting them a bit easier perhaps. I reused my platform cement colour for the grey interior here, and the white roofs use the same paint as my platform slab edging. For the first time I tried a panel wash around the numerous doors. It certainly makes them pop, but I'm not sure yet I'll repeat it elsewhere. What do you think? As I said, the rebuild is a real faff, and I did intend to light these, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg conundrum as to what to put where and how to get it all back together. I also couldn't eliminate light bleed around the panel joins, and so for the sake of my sanity I have given up for now. I probably will come back to it. I'd gone so far as adding West Hill Wagon Works mail sacks and a couple of chaps here having a quick break in one of them, but for now I'll satisfy myself with a flashing tail lamp, which was a much easier project. I got this idea from a channel called Strathpeffer Junction, which seems to have been dormant for 5 or 6 years now, but take a look there to see how it's all done. It's still up. Basically, I used a 0.9mm pin vise to mill through the back of these white metal tail lamps, so you can pop through a tiny flashing red LED, which is pre-wired. They're dead easy to thread through a hole in the back wall of the coach. I hooked them up to a coin battery with a magnetic reed switch midway along the red wire. A lot less faff than anything else I've tried, and I think I can use this on any piece of rolling stock I might want to stick a light on. I blobbed some black acrylic paint on the back to eliminate light bleed. Oh, and yeah, I've never been able to pop out and preserve the red lens in these lamps like the chap on Strathpeffer Junction does, but from 2 feet away I can't see them missing, and the effect is really good. I haven't measured the flash speed, but I'm happy with it. The components are dead cheap too, £7 I think for the lamps. The LEDs are a few quid for 25, plus the cost of reed switches and batteries, etc. This is the way forward for me, definitely. The flagship of my RES fleet, 90019, is a Bachmann Class 90, fitted with Crewe, buffer detail and a Loxan 5 decoder. This is my first Class 90 with the Howes sound file, the others are Bachmann factory sound. The real loco was one of 5 Class 90s to be allocated to RES in the 016-020 series, and was painted into their livery at the start of 1992, although it had carried the name Penny Black since May 1990. The RES Class 90s retain their 110 mph speed rating, unlike the rail freights, and could still appear on passenger duties. 019 has had a long service life, also spending time on the East Coast, Great Eastern, and more recently Freightliners. It's only recently gone into storage at Crewe. A very attractive model with a great livery application. A stablemate from Crewe Electric 86416 is a Helgen 864 with Legoman Biffo sound on a Loxan 5 chip. Formerly named Wigan Pier, it lost its nameplates and gained the RES livery in January 1993. It was withdrawn 9 years later and scrapped in 2005. The 86s are my only Helgen models. They're not amazing, to be honest, and certainly don't justify the RRPs, but they're good enough and do the job. The turquoise blue of the RES logo is too dark, however, and I know from bitter experience not to mess with the paintwork on these. IPA and a cotton bud go through the paint like a hot knife through butter. Of the 3 electric classes here at Walton, though, they have the best pantograph by far. This was the first 47 painted into the parcels livery and named in May 1990 after Sir Rowland Hill, the creator of the modern postal system and the first ever postage stamp, the penny black. All my 47s are Bachmann, and this is a bit of a favourite of mine. It's my longest serving 47 and was the first I fitted with sound, having a coastal sound file on a Loxan 5 chip. The real thing wore this livery until its withdrawal in March 2000, so this model fits 100% of my era. Entering traffic as D1111 in February 1967, this was the final Class 47 to be built and spent its first 2 decades on the East Coast Main Line. In November 87 it moved to Bristol Bath Road, and after gaining nameplates and a new livery in 1989 it moved to Crewe Diesel in April 1991. There it ran on the usual mix of passenger and parcels work until it moved to Immingham in October 97. After less than a year there it was withdrawn in June 98, but survived another 10 years before it met its end. It was a well-worked and tidily kept loco at Crewe, retaining an admittedly fading intercity mainline livery throughout, as well as its large nameplates and crests, by which it could be easily recognised. My version's a bit of a hybrid. The chassis is from 47612 Titan, which I was going to convert into 47471 Norman Tunner GC. I'm ashamed to say I made a right royal mess of that, so I bought a body shell for 47832 Tamar off eBay. The windscreen area was painted in exec dark grey. I swapped the tanks and did a simple renumbering with a mix of Railtech nameplates, numbers and cast arrows, and a Fox Transfers etched crest. I can live without the small brass plaque, which should also be there. As usual, it's chipped to the Locksound 5 decoder with the ESU hi-fi sound file for a 47.4. Very pleased with this conversion, and you'll see it often across 100% of my era. This old wreck has only just entered service at Walton. It made a brief appearance in the news roundup last episode after I'd finally fitted it with an ESU hi-fi sound chip. I quite like tatty work-worn locos on my layout as a contrast to all the sharp-suited 87s. There's an even worse one coming up next. It's a Kerno Special Edition, factory weathered into a very distressed state. If you think it's over the top, here's the real thing. A long-time resident of Bescot, it spent 4 years at Bath Road before transferring to Crewe in April 1991. It only just squeaks into my era by a few months, but I like it enough to rule one it into 1993. It finally got a long overdue repaint in December 1992 and survives to this day as 47772 at West Coast Railways in Carnforth. Don't say I didn't warn you. This is another Kerno Special Edition and captures the real thing during its Network South East era. This was a hard-worked and well-travelled machine, cascaded off Edinburgh-Glasgow push-pulls by Class 158s in 1987. It saw active service from Eastfield, Crewe, Old Oak Common and Eastleigh before returning to Crewe when 158s cascaded it off the West of England main line. 706 ran parcels out of Crewe diesel from May 93 to April 94, and occasionally got to relive its glory years on passenger express duties, and will do the same for me. It has an ESU hi-fi sound chip, which is now my default for all 47.4s, 7s and 8s. It carried its Scottish heritage to the grave, its tatty ScotRail livery adorned by both Eastfield and Haymarket depot badges, although it lost its Strathclyde nameplate in April 1986. It was withdrawn as unserviceable in June 94 and cut up on site in August 95. Another push-pull Scot that was exiled to the southeast was 47715 Haymarket. Unlike its shabby friend, 715 did get a fresh coat of paint in revised NSE livery, and this looks stunning on this model, I think. This is my only Network Southeast loco, and it joined Crewe Diesel around August 1993 and ran in this livery until its withdrawal in September 1998. This loco was preserved and is currently in the ownership of Harry Needle, I believe. It's brand new to the layout and it's been detailed and had my standard ESU hi-fi chip fitted. It will get a light weathering at some point, but nothing too drastic, as I really like the look of this model as it is. From spring 94, RES started the transformation of their ragbag fleet into long-range tanked TDM-fitted 47.7s. 768 Resonance was one of the first. The base model is 47745 Royal London Society for the Blind, and I've renumbered it and fitted the Crewe diesel adornments and given it a light weathering. The nameplate is a Railtech 3D transfer rather than an etched plate, and it has the usual ESU hi-fi sound chip. RES locos could be pressed into a variety of traffic, so look out for these running reliefs, foot X's and stock movements at Walton. I've also configured the 47s to run at a maximum scale speed of 120 miles per hour, with the same speed curve as my 87s and Intercity 90s. This enables me to model another very important RES operation, the diesel drags, when sections of the overhead wires were powered off for maintenance. And yes, I know not to exceed 95. 47s are my most numerous class, not because I'm a Duff fanboy, but just because they were the most numerous class in real life. The 90s Crewe RES fleet is a great way of running era-appropriate locos in a variety of liveries which otherwise would have no business running through the Midlands. I'm going to duck out now and leave you to enjoy my grand finale. I'll be back in February with episode 5. I need a bit of a break to catch up on things and have a lot going on over the Christmas period. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great Christmas and New Year. See you soon. Bye-bye.